For 60 years, a Porsche meant one thing. You had made it. It was the rare luxury brand that printed money. While other car makers fought over thin margins, Porsche earned an operating margin near 15%, more profit per car than almost anyone on Earth. And then, almost overnight, the machine started to stall. Deliveries falling, profit almost wiped out. A 98% collapse that made headlines across the financial press. The company that could do no wrong suddenly couldn't sell the very cars it bet its future on. This is the story of how the smartest luxury brand in the world walked straight into a trap of its own design. And the villain is not the one you think. This is the EV trap. To understand the fall, you have to understand how high Porsche stood. By the early 2020s, Porsche wasn't just a car company. It was a financial phenomenon. An operating margin around 15%, territory most car makers can only dream of. In 2022, it went public in one of Europe's largest listings in years, briefly worth more than its own parent company, Volkswagen. Then came the vision. Porsche looked at Tesla, looked at the future, and made a bold promise. By 2030, 80% of its sales would be fully electric. The first proof was the Taycan, a stunning electric sports sedan. The second, and far bigger bet, was the electric Macan, the brand's best-selling model, reimagined with no engine at all. On paper, it was genius. Get ahead of the shift. Own the premium EV buyer before anyone else. Porsche was, as it always had been, thinking 10 years ahead. There was just one problem. The future didn't arrive on schedule. The crack started where Porsche was strongest, with its electric flagship. Taycan sales didn't grow into the future. They fell, more than a fifth in a single year. The car critics loved, buyers cooled on. It turned out the people who wanted a six-figure electric Porsche were a much smaller club than the spreadsheets predicted. Then the second crack. China. For years, China was Porsche's growth engine, one of its biggest markets on Earth. But Chinese buyers shifted to fast, cheap, tech-loaded domestic EVs. Why pay a German premium when a local brand offered more screen, more range, more software, for less? Porsche sales in China didn't dip. They fell by more than a quarter in a single year. And the Taycan all but vanished, fewer than 50 sold in 2 months. And the deeper problem wasn't just one slow-selling car. It was the bet underneath it. Porsche hadn't only designed electric models, it had built the factories, the supply deals, even its own battery cell company to feed them. When the demand didn't show up, all of that turned from an asset into a weight. The electric Macan was supposed to be the volume engine of the new era, the car that would carry the brand into 2030. Instead, it arrived into a market that had already cooled, priced against Chinese rivals that were faster, cheaper, and packed with more technology. The badge that once guaranteed a premium was suddenly negotiable. Here's the trap closing. Porsche had engineered its lineup, its factories, and its 2030 promise around a wave of EV demand at the luxury end. But at the very top of the market, that wave of demand simply never came. This is how a crack becomes a collapse. Each problem feeds the next, and the bill, when it finally arrived, had 10 digits. Demand for its EVs stalled, so Porsche had to do the unthinkable for a company that prides itself on planning. It reversed course. The 80% electric by 2030 target quietly walked back. It announced it would keep building gas and hybrid models far longer than promised, and take 4.7 billion euros in write-downs on the electric roadmap it had spent years building. One bet, reversed, costs a fortune. Those U-turns hit the one number that made Porsche special: profit. Its operating margin fell from around 15% to barely above zero. The company that earned luxury tier returns now made almost nothing on every car it sold. Full-year operating profit fell 98%, from over 5 billion euros to under 100 million. Analysts had to read it twice. And it wasn't only China and electric. New tariffs in the United States, another of Porsche's biggest markets, cost the company around 700 million euros in a single year. When your margins are already thin, a number like that doesn't sting. It breaks bones. By 2026, the cost-cutting turned brutal. A new chief executive, Michael Leiters, took over and began dismantling the very future Porsche had promised. It shut down its own battery cell company, the one built specifically to power the electric era. In total, the company moved to cut almost 2,500 jobs out of a workforce near 42,000. A brand that spent years building toward electric was now paying to unwind it piece by piece. The stock that once topped Volkswagen has lost more than half its value since the IPO. The financial phenomenon had become a cautionary tale, and the bleeding didn't stop. In the first quarter of 2026, deliveries fell another 15%. China down again, the Taycan down again. Tellingly, the gas-powered 911 went the other way, up 22%. It was the electric bet that was dying. Each domino was survivable alone. Together, they formed a spiral. And Porsche spent 2025 and 2026 trying to climb out of a hole it had dug while everyone applauded. So what actually killed Porsche's golden run? Not electric cars. EVs aren't the villain here. The trap was conviction without a hedge. Porsche didn't fail because it bet on the future. It failed because it bet on one specific timeline for the future and built everything around it. The factories, the models, the promise to investors. When demand arrived slower and unevenly, strong here, weak there, a company with flexibility adapts quietly. A company that went all in has to reverse in public and pay for the reversal twice. Once to go, once to come back. And here's the proof it didn't have to go this way. While Porsche bet everything on a single electric timeline, another company made the opposite call. Toyota refused to go all in. It kept building hybrids, added a few electric models, and waited. The result? Record global sales and billions in profit, while the all-in believers wrote down billions. Same industry, same uncertain future. One hedged its bet and won. The other bet on certainty and paid for it. That's the quiet lesson hiding inside Porsche's numbers. The future was always going to be electric, eventually. But eventually and by 2030 are not the same sentence. And the gap between them cost Porsche its crown. There's a second lesson, and it's the one your business should remember. A premium brand's pricing power is borrowed, not owned. Porsche assumed buyers would always pay more for the badge. But in China, a new generation looked at a local EV with better tech and asked the question every luxury brand fears. What exactly am I paying extra for? The moment your customer can answer that question with "nothing I can't get elsewhere," the premium evaporates. Porsche will likely survive. It's too good, too storied, too well run to disappear. But its untouchable era is over. And it ended not with a bad product, but with a confident plan that left no room to be wrong. Every empire leaves a body. We do the autopsy. If Porsche bet too hard on one future, the next brand we examine bet on none. And it's quietly dying while everyone thinks it's fine. That autopsy is right here. Subscribe, and we'll see you on the table.